Hello, friends, and welcome to the March 3rd edition of Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly podcast designed to help mainstream Texans of faith understand the legislative process and help you engage with the Texas legislature. My name is Scott Atnip, your host and Texas Impact's Director of Public Witness, and this week we're joined by Jamila English, Legislative Director for the Texas chapter of MGAGE, a foundation with the goal of educating and mobilizing Muslim American voters in support of policies that enable their communities to thrive and democracy to flourish. But before we get to Jamila, I just wanted to thank all of the advocates of faith who've engaged so far this session. For those of you who've been hearing Texas Impact's legislative updates, you'll know that the first third of the 140-day legislative session is about relationship building. And it has been so good meeting with you all and hearing about your meetings with legislators. But now comes the real work, the second third of session, where committees begin hearing bills. And it's starting to get busy at the Capitol, and Texas Impact is here to resource your work throughout the entire session. I do want to say thanks to all of you who have signed up for a rapid response team, a legislative engagement group, or an issue champion team. You can learn more about these opportunities at texasimpact.org. Click on Take Action. And y'all, as we mentioned, committees are meeting, and we need advocates of faith speaking up for our shared values, working for justice and equity. We'll have a lot of opportunities in the week to come, and we hope to see you all fully engaged in the process. All right, y'all, I think that is enough intro for today. I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Jamila English. Joining us for today's conversation is Jamila English, Legislative Director for MGAGE, the Texas chapter. Jamila, it's so great having you with us today. I really enjoyed catching up a week or two ago at Texas Impact's Interfaith Advocacy Day, so thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. I'm really honored to be here.
I want to start out because some of our listeners might not be familiar with MGAGE. So why don't you start by talking about MGAGE and the work that you're doing?
Well, MGAGE is an organization that uplifts the voice of the Muslim community. And we've been around for about 15 years now, and we're in an exciting area of growth where we're just expanding our reach and doing so much for the community. And part of what I do as their legislative director, I'm based out here in Austin. And for right now, the first immediate work is this Texas legislative session.
Right.
Yes. So, yeah.
So, yeah, I hear you.
Yes. I just came from, I think, 5-hour hearing yesterday. That was the first hearing of the session that I attended. So.
Yeah, I haven't had my first all-nighter yet, but I assume that is coming in the next couple of weeks now that we're into committee season. Yeah. You mentioned the Texas legislature. You're not originally from Texas. You, in fact, come from California. I assume the politics are a little different. But what about this position, coming to Texas and working with MGAGE, really got your attention?
It was the first thing that got my attention was the chance to do really on the ground civil rights work and advocate for a group who, Texas has the most anti-Muslim legislation in the country. So it's exciting to be able to do that work. Another aspect of the job that I didn't expect until I actually was working for the organization was being able to work with a group that really works around the fundamentals of their faith. It's really, I think anyone who has done any work in politics, especially recently, there's a lot of talk, but do what I do, not do what I say. And it makes for a very difficult work environment. And to be able to work for MGAGE, a group that follows their faith, and they follow that through the work and how they treat their employees and the work that we do is a gift.
Yeah, I know many of us, come from a Christian background, but we're really brought this to the forefront a couple of years ago when we saw what happened at the Texas Muslim Capital Days. kind of a horrifying experience for many of us in the way that community was treated. But speaking of faith, you're not a Muslim yourself, so I wonder if you could tell us some about your faith journey and how it informs the work you're doing with Engage, a group that's working from a faith perspective.
It's interesting. My faith journey, I think, is the same, is close to a lot of people at least in my generation. It is, I'm not currently with a church or an organization, but I grew up around them. One side of my family is Catholic. The other side of my family was non-practicing with the Black church. And then I grew up around New Age religion. And so I always say I'm a religious mutt. I know old school, real school, and new school. That's how I usually put it. And so it's very interesting now as my journey has changed over the years. I kind of stepped away from organized religion, even though I'm deeply spiritual. And now I'm in a place where I think is the next chapter of my spiritual journey where things are working together to have me actually working more with churches again. With the organization that I work for, being able to work with Texas Impact. My brother's going to seminary school. Is like I feel like there's something going on in my spiritual journey right now, and I'm here for the ride. My spirituality is very important to me.
Yeah. So, good.
And no, and actually, I think it has been a sad point for me to not be able to have a place where I can practice that. I think my childhood was not easy, and having that church community really made it fundamentally better.
Yeah. So talking about the intersection of faith and public policy, you mentioned that, or I mentioned, I guess, that you came from California and are now doing this work at the Texas Capitol. Talk some about your policy background and how it's prepared you for this moment with the Texas legislature.
Well, most recently, I received my master's in public policy, which is fantastic. Yes. I am a policy nerd. I fell in love in politics when I was 5, and I've been following it ever since. I did a bit of consulting after I worked for the Oakland City Council. I was the policy director for the vice mayor there, and I've had just a long history. I worked for a California representative who is now state senator. I was fortunate enough to intern. I'll give one part of my journey. I interned for Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Nice.
When she was in the state legislature, and a point of honor, because if people don't know, she was the only elected official who voted no against the Iraq War, which is a war that most people feel was incorrect. And so right now she's running for Senate in California, so that'll be fun to watch.
I was going to say, she's been in the news recently. Yeah.
Yes. So it's just been a long journey in policy. I feel very fortunate that I am able to work. I know my purpose and I get to follow it. So it's.
That's awesome. Texas is a little bit different place, I guess you're probably finding out.
It's different, but it's the same in many ways.
Yeah.
I would say California and Texas, the similarity is they are both very, very independent in their views, somewhat to their detriment sometimes. Right. So, yeah.
Well, so let's get into what's coming up. I know you and I talked, and we know that you're going to be bringing a group, or I guess groups, to the Texas Capitol soon for Texas Muslim Capital Day and AAPI Advocacy Day. So tell us about those events, what's coming up, and how people can get involved.
Well, we have 2 events next week. The first one is on Tuesday, March 7th. That's going to be Texas Muslim Capital Day. And what we do there is we are able to actually bring people to the Capitol and interact with our legislators, learn more about how the process works on the site where a lot of the process works. And it's a really wonderful day that everyone can come and learn more about the process. On March 9th, there is AAPI Advocacy Day, and it's a lot of the same work, and that's for the overall general Asian community. So there are 2 really exciting days, and it's perfect timing as we go into committees with a lot of this legislation people can learn more about the basics of our civic duties and what we're allowed, what we can do here. Yeah, how we can raise our
And so
voices.
those are great days, seeing people from across the state come in, and many coming to the Capitol for the first time and going in and making legislative visits for the first
Yes.
time. So that's always an amazing experience. Are there any issues in particular that y'all are hitting with those groups?
Yes. I think one area that has really come up in this session is around voting rights. So there are a few laws that would restrict some voting rights, and we are focusing on that. We're also focused on a couple of bills that have come across the legislature around, I think, SB 147 and SB 711, that could deny the right to own property for individuals in the state. And that affects deeply both the Muslim community and overall Asian American community. So those are just a couple of issues that we're talking about. But this is an impactful legislative session. There are going to be a lot of issues that come up.
And where can folks find out issues that you're following? Do y'all have a way that people can stay up to date on what y'all are tracking?
Well, one thing they can do is if they want to come to Texas Muslim Capital Day or AAPI Advocacy Day, there's two ways. Let's see. The first way to sign up for the Muslim Capital Day is to go to texasmuslimcapitalday.com. And the last day to register is tomorrow. And then AAPI Advocacy Day, you can sign up at bsandboyit.ly/TAAC sign up. And they'll learn more about what the communities are working on for this legislative session.
I feel like one of the questions I have to ask, and I wish I didn't have to ask, but I wonder if you can share some thoughts on challenges that Texas Muslims face in engaging with the Texas legislature, and how those challenges might be similar to or different from other minority groups.
One of the challenges is, I think it's a challenge that many groups have, is falling into the category of the other. And walking into your Capitol, walking into this session as a Texan, as an American, as a voter, as a hard worker, but not feeling like you belong there. I think it's a common feeling for many people walking into the Capitol. And interacting with the legislators is sometimes it's just a learning experience. Depending on if a legislator has not interacted with the groups that are coming to the Capitol, it could be a learning experience. There could be concerns on both sides. I do believe in the ability for humans to be their best, and I always hope for that. And I think since there's been a rise in hate against the Muslim community and the Asian community as a whole, ever since the Muslim ban, and it can make people nervous about going to the Capitol. It can be re-traumatizing to walk into any kind of governmental structure for people who have been categorized as the other. So, I think those are some.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen some of that over the years, but also seen many acts of people being their best selves, kind of in response. So,
Yes.
So what's your message to the community to encourage that participation, to encourage that engagement?
I think I have a message for the overall community, not just the Muslim community, but Texans as well.
Yeah,
like let's do our best. Let's listen.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I love about living in Texas is just the sense of community. I just the kindness. I think I was carrying water in for the hearings yesterday. The water is a huge package. It fell apart. Everybody who was walking behind me stopped, helped me fix the packaging, carried the stuff up. People were helping me. There's that overall sense of community that you find in Texas, you find in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And let's follow that when we interact with each other.
Yeah.
Let's follow the rules of the faith that we learned in church. Let's all do that. Whether it was a church, it was a mosque, wherever you were, let's follow that. And I think we can all move forward and live and have faith over fear if you are afraid of going into the Capitol, if you're afraid of the other. I think faith over fear is going to be what works best.
Faith over fear. And yeah, we can all do a lot better job of listening to and being part of community together. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time today. Any shameless plugs you'd like to leave us with before we check out today?
Well, I love how you put that. Okay.
Let's just own it. I want to give you a chance. Throw it out there.
Anyone who's listening to this is not seeing the wonderful, like the dad grin, just the smile.
The dad grin. Here. My kids are going to love that. I'm using that when I get home.
So Engage is having their 10th annual gala. And this group, I just love this group. Okay, so it's the 10th annual, it's a big one. And it's going to be on April 9th at 6 p.m. at the Arab American Cultural and Community Center in Houston. And it is a benefit, and the fundraiser goes to a variety of community outreach activities and a lot of voter education work on behalf of Texas Muslims. And it's focused on the lowest propensity eligible Muslim voter. So if you want to sign up, it's bit.ly/HTXEM, M as in mother, GAGE, Gala 23. And that again is bit.ly/HTXEM, GAG, Gala 23.
All right. Well, Jamila, really appreciate the conversation today. Any closing thoughts before we go?
Let's try walking in faith a little bit during this Texas session. I think we'll all be amazed.
Yep, it's about to get busy, so we're going to need that faith to make it through. All right. Well, again, really appreciate the conversation. It was fun hanging out with you today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the Capitol soon.
Thank you, Scott. Have a wonderful weekend.
I'd like to thank Jamila for joining us, but I especially want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and are ready to get to work at the Texas Capitol. Texas Impact is participating in several events in the month of March at the Capitol and across Texas, so I look forward to seeing many of you in person or online. Make sure that you aren't missing out by signing up at texasimpact.org, and make sure that you're following along on social media. We look forward to resourcing your advocacy, and I'm happy to try my best to answer your questions, so feel free to reach out at scott@texasimpact.org. As we wrap up, make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast and that you're sharing it with your friends and congregations, and go to texasimpact.org for other ways that you can get involved throughout the session. While you're there, make sure that you and your congregation are members of Texas Impact to support this podcast and the work of Texas Impact year-round. And with that, I think it's time to draw this episode to a close. So remember, the world needs Texans of faith active and engaged. So let's get to work.
Weekly Witness is hosted by Scott Atnet, engineered and produced by David Fasalo. Our executive producer is B. Moorhead. The opinions expressed on Weekly Witness are those of Texas Impact and our guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views of our sponsors. Weekly Witness is a product of Texas Impact, people of faith working for justice. Visit us online at texasimpact.org.